Well, world, you're gonna get to listen to me rant and talk in circles, and hopefully you understand what I'm talking about here, because I'm just shooting from the hip. Hey there guys, this is Joe, Sloppy Joe Shredshack, and today I'm going to tell you why I sold all of my 100 watt tube heads and moved over to the Helix instead. Well, anyways, I'm Joe, this is Sloppy Joe Shredshack, and if you haven't ever seen my face before, welcome to the Shred Shack. And now feel free, if you're not subscribed, click that subscribe button, because that would make me feel real good, and I like feeling real good. Now, if you're interested in any of the music that's playing in the background right now, it's my friend's band, Fault Choir. A bunch of my buds are in it. They're from Houghton, Michigan. Great band. Links are going to be down below. Also, links to all of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about in this video will also be down below, so definitely feel free to go and click those and kind of do a little bit more research on it on your own end. Alright, so back to the video. Why did I sell all my tube heads and go with a Line 6 Helix? Basically, I am committing sacrilege in the guitar world right now. I had a few PV heads. I most recently have been running Marshall dual super leads, lovely amplifiers, especially for rock and roll. But honestly, I needed something that was a bit more flexible. So here's the problems that I always run into. One, I'm constantly switching genres up, using different guitars and different things like that. And I needed to have a rig that could encompass everything. Whenever I would have an amplifier, I could dial in whatever particular sound I was looking for with that particular rig. So when I was running, you know, some of the PV equipment, I was definitely playing a lot more heavy metal at the time, and it sounded great for that, but to me it didn't sound very good for rock. Then I had some Marshall heads that sounded great for rock. At the time I was playing a lot of stoner metal, stoner rock, different things like that, slamming fuzz pedals right into the front end of the amp. But then I was finding with my Marshalls that I couldn't get the heavy metal tones that I really truly wanted. So here I am with this pile of equipment that honestly I was only using whenever I needed to use it, and it was just taking up space 90% of the time, outside of the 10% when I'm actually using this stuff. But I think the first thing that you need to assess if you're going to take that jump into the Line 6 Helix or the Kemper or the Axe Effects or anything like that is that you definitely have to be looking in what you need in your personal rig, or at least your personal preferences, right? So personally, I needed something that would work live. I needed something that could get really good recordings because I do demos and reviews and different things. And then I also wanted something that sounded good when I practiced. So after doing, you know, a bunch of research on different things that I could get, I kept coming back to modeling amplifiers, which at the time I was just aghast that I was even considering that, because I was such a tube amplifier type guy. Another problem that I kept running into was that I had copious amounts of pedals, just so many pedals, and every pedal served a different purpose, right? You know, I'd have all of my fuzz pedals, then I'd have a bunch of different overdrives, I'd have, you know, multiple delays and reverbs, sitting around at least, you know, different modulation effects going from like a phase to a univibe, organ machines, different things of that nature, right? So at this point now I have multiple heads, multiple cabs, so many pedals I don't even know what to do with. Finally, and probably the most important part, no space to put anything. That's the most frustrating part for me. So personally, I was looking to downsize. I didn't want to have, you know, piles and piles and piles of gear that I'm barely using unless I'm playing that particular genre or trying to get into something completely different or mixing and mashing. I didn't like, you know, connecting all the pedals and putting everything together. I got really good at it eventually, but you know, it just wasn't for me. It was so much work, and very, very expensive once you start adding in, you know, $50, $200, you know, $150 pedals, all the patch cables, all the power supplies, the pedal board that you need, all of the carrying cases for everything. It gets really, really, really expensive. So like I was saying, I definitely needed more of a Swiss Army knife type approach. But what scares me is when I was young, and I think a lot of, you know, guys in their later 20s, early 30s, 40s, you know, all the older guys too, the only way to get a good tone was to buy really good equipment. You couldn't have Swiss Army knife packages. You know, back in the late 90s, we had these really crappy digital modelers that were, I mean, they were terrible, like the Digitech RP50s and different things like that. They are horrifyingly bad. So that's what I honestly remember about modeling technology and different things. I was, you know, absolutely convinced that there's no way that digital could ever get an analog type sound. But then after doing some, you know, research and different things, looking at the Helix, looking at the Kemper, looking at the Axe effects, I was convinced that, hey, some of my favorite players are using this equipment. Why don't I try it out? Luckily, I had a friend, his name's Craig, fantastic guitarist. He had a guitar that I really wanted to try out. He was playing a Kiesel Aries, he just got that, and he also had a Line 6 Helix that he recently purchased and absolutely swore by it. Now this was, you know, a heavy metal guy running Marshall triple super leads, was playing, you know, virtuoso type stuff, played in thrash bands, like, so this is the guy that I need to talk to, because if this guy is convinced, he can definitely, at least possibly, convince me. So one day I met up with Craig and I was buying some equipment at the time from him, and he, you know, we monkeyed around with the Helix, and man, at that moment, that's when I was sold. Like, within 2 minutes of plugging into this Helix, I'm going, this sounds really, really good. It's tonally accurate to what I'm used to, and it can easily pass for a very, very solid tube amplifier tone being mic'd up with high quality microphones. So of course I kept doing more research into it, because I'm definitely one of those consumers that reviews everything for months and months and months. And once I finally got myself convinced that I needed to maybe move in this direction, it got me thinking, why don't I sell my tube amps? Why don't I sell my large stock of pedals that I have going on here? That'll, one, easily pay for a Helix, you know, two, buy me some new studio monitors, which I really, really needed, and three, will lighten the load on my back when I'm hauling stuff. That's the important thing for me, at least. You know, I live in smaller places. At the time I was living in an apartment or a triplex. You know, I had someone above me and somebody below me, so I needed to be really quiet on top of that. On top of all of the other struggles that I had with owning big tube amps and trying to get them to sound good at a, you know, a low volume, which is impossible. That was another one of the moments where I realized, I gotta sell all this stuff and just take the dive, go into modeling, try it out. If I don't like it, someone's gonna buy this Helix off me at some point. So now I've talked about all of the reasons why I needed to get a new rig. One, I needed something that was good with recording. Two, something that could be essentially used for a live rig. And three, something that sounds good at low volume. Lastly, I keep saying like lastly or finally, and this is the reason, whatever. I'm really good at segueing, just so you know. But I needed something that would record bass really well too, if I ever decided that I wanted to do like a, you know, recording project or anything of that nature. So once I added all of those struggles and everything that I needed personally for my setup, you know, YouTube, recording, doing live stuff, every conclusion I came to a Helix. Now I could get into, you know, the arguments between, you know, Fractal versus Kemper versus Line 6. We're not gonna really talk about those today. Personally, I just love the models that Line 6 puts out, in my opinion, after kind of listening to all of the sound clips. Kemper probably has the most absolutely accurate sounds, but the Line 6 Helix is extremely flexible. The routing capabilities are insane. And I also wasn't really a big fan of the modeling on the Axe-Fx. Not that it's bad, it's really, really good, and so many pro players use an Axe-Fx, but to me, the Line 6 felt more authentic, at least to my ears. Okay, yeah, so obviously, you know, I went and sold my pedals, which was a good chunk of change. I sold my tube amps, which was a good chunk of change. And guess what? I was able to buy my Helix outright with a controller and grab monitors. And guess what? Now I have a legitimate studio setup that can do a live rig, that can record high quality stuff for my YouTube channel, demos, different things like that, or if I decided to do any kind of recording projects. And 3, now I can practice at a low volume and still have all of the flexibility that my really loud live rig absolutely has. And guess what? I can do it at talking volume. That was the massive selling point for me. Now I obviously took the dive too. You know, I bought myself a nice Gator pedal board. You know, I got my Line 6 controller here, and then I also have, you know, my Mission Engineering pedals. But yeah, like, now I can haul the rig that I record with into a venue if I want, get the same exact tones, throw everything through a power amp, and power my Marshall 412 or any kind of backline that the venue might even have, or run straight into house. The options are endless, absolutely endless, and it's great. You know, and for the live rig that I have going on here, I just have a Furman power conditioner. I'm gonna actually zoom in here if I can. Let's see if I can do this. You know, I got the Furman power conditioner there, I got my Crown amplifier, and then I got my Helix, and it sounds, you know, really, really good with, you know, a regular setup. It's fantastic. I was thoroughly impressed. I was kind of skeptical about it, but it happened to work out perfectly. So, you know, this was just my personal journey of switching over from tube amps to amp modeling stuff. And personally for me, it was the best absolute possible move I could ever make. And I don't really have any regrets whatsoever. You know, my friend Kevin, he knows how much of a tube amp nerd that I am, or at least tonally wise. I couldn't tell you how to actually build one of these dang things, but he goes, you're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret every moment. And you know, it's been approximately a year since I've had the Helix, and I don't regret 1 second of selling all my tube heads. Not 1 second at all. Also, I still love you, Kevin. Don't worry, even though you're wrong. So yeah, so in conclusion, even though I kind of, you know, this is more of a low-key video, I kind of just ranted a whole bunch, but the Line 6 Helix covers all of the bases that I need. You know, it sounds great. You know, the only thing that I honestly didn't like about the Helix, to be totally frank, were the IRs. I wasn't a giant fan of them. The IRs with like a clean signal sound great. The IRs with a high gain signal, not worth it unless you want to do a lot of tweaking. I'm more of a plug and play type person, so I just went and bought some own hammer IRs, and bingo bango, I got some good tones. And last but not least, you know, this is something that I kind of forgot to talk about. Amps like to break down, because I don't know why, they just do. Also, I didn't like retubing amplifiers because it was just another added expense, and essentially it's an infinite expense. The length of that amplifier, you're going to be constantly dropping $200 worth of tubes into this thing periodically for the entire length of that amplifier. So that was something that also played into my thought process, if I'm being totally frank here. And I would like to gladly say I have not had to buy a set of tubes since I've bought the Helix. But anyways, if you like the content that I'm putting out, definitely click subscribe, smash that bell notification, and follow me in all of the upcoming videos. Now, you can also hit me up on Facebook. Now, you can just type that into your browser, Sloppy Joe Shredshack, whatever you want to do, or you can hit me up on Instagram at sloppyjoes_shredshack. But anyways, I'm Joe. This was why I bought a Line 6 Helix. It's my Swiss Army knife for guitar, and it sounds really good, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's possibly looking to get one. All right, guys, later.